Hey everybody, my name is Nate and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I painted the Lord of Poxes. I had a lot of fun with this model. It's a newer model from the Poxrot Vector Battle Box, and I did things a little bit differently, but you'll see here in just a second. So starting off with the cloaks, I'm going to be using Ironclad Gray. It is from the Army Painters John Blanche collaboration pack, one of them at least. I highly suggest checking out both of them if you enjoy a more grimdark style of painting. You'll actually see me use a lot of the colors from this pack, especially in future videos, because with my ongoing Death Guard army, I cannot even tell you. I think I use actually every single paint almost from those two collaboration packs. They're very good at just the overall aesthetic and vibe that I'm going for, at least. Now, I will say there are a few spots in this video, this is my bad, but a few parts I have to backtrack. This is a very busy model, very fun to paint, but there are a few spots that I had overlooked when I was painting this color. Particularly, there's this pouch in the front of his body that I didn't even realize was a pouch. But I'll explain that and then one other area whenever we get there. You'll also notice that I have primed my mini in Wraithbone. Now, I do that for two reasons. The first reason is because I wanted his armor set to look more like the Heresy era armor set with the white armor, or tan armor rather, with the green pauldrons. I'm a big fan of that style, but also because whenever you prime your mini in lighter colors, thinner paints like contrast paints, they tend to um, allow that highlight to bleed through, and it helps out a lot, especially when you're like me. I hate edge highlighting. I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. But that kind of just gives me an excuse to not have to do it, which is also another big reason why I love the grimdark style. Now, with the backpack or sack, whatever you want to call it, I use Xandri Dust by Citadel. And the reason that I'm using Xandri Dust is because whenever I go into painting a mini, I like to, for it specifically to have its own story, right? So, like this one in particular, whenever I was looking at it, I kind of pictured him in a more arid environment, maybe like a desert planet of some sort, and I feel like the browns, the light tan would be a good fit for something like that. It's also a lot easier to weather. It looks really nice whenever you apply like an enamel paint, like I will later in this video on it. Just really catches that grime. But overall, I feel like the Xandri dust on the sack bag, whatever it is that you want to call this thing on his back, I feel like it was, probably the best route to go for the overall picture that I had in my head. Like some sickly dune walker that's, puffing dust and disease and grime and just overall Papa Nurgle's blessing all over the desert, I guess is kind of where I was going with it. Now, if you'll remember earlier on in the video when I was talking about having to backtrack because of the pouch, this is it. I didn't realize until like while I was painting his bag that this was also a pouch in the front. So this is kind of me just going over it again with the same ironclad gray as the cloaks. Now, I believe in the front is some sort of pump, and I'm trying not to get the ironclad gray on the pump because I'm going to be using a heavy metal metallic on it in here in just a second. It is one of my favorite metallics that I have. Actually, it's called heavy metal. It's another one of the war paints from the John Blanche set. And I use this paint religiously. I use it on pretty much every weapon, every piece of like machinery that my minis have. It's almost like Leadbelcher 2.0 in a sense where it's like if Leadbelcher already had Nuln Oil applied to it. Just the overall shade that it gives automatically really helps out. Now you still want to apply shade to it just so that that shade color gets in the recesses and helps out with the overall contrast of the mini. But I use it pretty much on everything. If I haven't ran out of a single paint yet, but if when I do, it's probably going to be this one first, maybe even Emperor's Gold. and we'll get to that later. But I just think that overall, for the grimdark aesthetic, the overall depth that you're getting out of this, black metallic, gray metallic paint is pretty much what you need. Really hoping that they keep the John Blanche sets as a permanent buy. Hopefully, it's not just a seasonal thing, or at least maybe they'll sell the bottles individually so you don't have to buy the entire set just to get one, because I will probably use this paint on uh, every mini that I have, honestly. And right now, as I apply it to the backside of his pack, I'm trying not to get it into the tubing because the tubing is going to be Emperor's Gold. So just all the miscellaneous fittings and connections, I guess you could say, on his pack is kind of what I'm trying to hit here. Um, like I said, not trying to get onto the tubings because those will be like a almost like a coppery gold color that you'll see here in a minute. But right now, we're just focusing on the brace and fittings for his sack of disease. I'm just gonna that's what I'm gonna call it, the sack of disease. So just trying to not get into these uh, outer lines. Those are also going to be the Emperor's Gold. So not trying to get the color on those. And once you're done applying that, that's pretty much what it's going to look like. Now, I know I told you that I'm not going to sleep on Leadbelcher and that we'd use it. And for that, we're going to be applying it to his sword, which is, in my opinion, probably one of the coolest swords I've seen on a mini so far. This Executioner sword is what I'm going to say it is. Is I mean, it's awesome. This has got to be one of the coolest blades. That's really what drew me to this whole pack, was seeing this one particular model in it, which I did need the rest of them to complete my army anyways. But this guy is this guy is sick. There's no doubt about it. That sword was the selling point for me. Trying to get it here on his breathing apparatus, trying my best to not get it on his actual helmet itself. But if we do, that's just another happy accident to add to the book, as Bob Ross would say. Also, you're going to see for the remainder of the video that I am still trying to work on my camera angles and focus. So it's a little something I'm trying to work on here. I noticed that it's a little hard to see, probably not the ideal position, but we will work on that in future videos. Right now, just kind of working on this little pump system that's in his, I'm going to call it his kangaroo pouch in the front, and then working on painting the emblems on his knee. And then other than that, the only other thing that I paint in Leadbelcher is going to be his gun. That is the second thing that I had mentioned earlier that is off camera. I apologize for that. I don't know why I forgot to record me painting his gun, but it is also in Leadbelcher. Moving on to Tainted Garden, this is a green color from the John Blanche set, and I love this green. It's like a mossy green, like a swampy green. I prefer it more than the actual Death Guard green itself. I find it that the regular Death Guard green color is just a little bit too light for my taste. And when we're painting Death Guard minis, we want them to look, gross and worn. And I feel like this just kind of captures that a lot better than regular Death Guard green. To me, the deeper aged green, I feel like, is just a better suit for the Death Guard, especially when you are painting them in the Heresy era armor style. Just looks more aged and worn than regular lighter Death Guard. Maybe they're new converts or something like that, or new heretics, as you could call them. Right now, painting the knee and then onto the middle. I don't really know what you would call that armor piece right there, to be honest with you. The flap in the middle. But after we get done painting that, it'll be on to the right pauldron on his shoulder. And we're trying not to hit the upper area because that is where the actual shoulder guard is. And that will be painted in Abaddon black later. Moving on to Emperor Gold, finally. This is my actual number one favorite paint from the John Blanche set. This is as if you were using regular gold and that has already been essentially washed with Agrax Earthshade. It's kind of just the look that I feel like it gives. Um, Once again, another paint that I use on every single Death Guard that I have. It looks fantastic once it's done, and even after you can even wash it with Agrax Earthshade as well, and that'll just give it even more worn look to it. Finally touching up on those spots that we were trying to avoid with the heavy metal and touching on the top of his helmet, trying to get this underpiece underneath this little flap down there, whatever you want to call that. And then after that, we're going to be moving on to the trim on his right leg on the top and the bottom. I feel like a lot of people miss these whenever I'm browsing the Reddits, and I think that doing those, taking the time to do those, really makes the mini stand out. It's something that just catches the eye, making sure that you catch all of the trim on the mini. Next, we're going to be touching the pommel of his super, super cool Executioner sword. And then after that, we're going to be touching the essentially the what would be the filter of his breathing apparatus, his gas mask or plague mask, whatever you want to call it, and then hitting the back piping of his sack or bag. We're never going to figure out what that thing's actually called, are we? It's like a bag of holding from D&D, except it's a bag of chlamydia and gonorrhea and disease. So we're touching up on the little rings holding the straps to his sword together, and then after that, we are going to be moving on to Abaddon Black, which we are going to use on the outer parts of his pauldrons. Now, Abaddon Black, I have a love and hate relationship with. Usually, I only ever use Abaddon Black for the outlines of the base. But this time, I thought it might be a good idea to try and use it on the pauldrons. The only thing is, though, is Abaddon Black, at least mine, always comes out extremely thick. So you need to make sure that you're thinning those paints. Get you a wet palette or a cup or something. Try and do a 1-to-1 ratio of the paint with whatever thinner it is that you're using. I use water unless I'm using my airbrush, and making sure it's thinned down, because I feel like if it's not thinned down, it really takes away a lot of detail with it being such a deep black. Using it for the leather straps as well, and that is going to be the only thing that we are going to be using Abaddon Black on today, other than the outside of his base itself. For the organ hoses, I like to call them, we're going to be using Rathkarth Flesh. Now, I had a camera issue and it was not recording it at all, but as you can see on all of his little organ hoses around him, that is where that was applied. And it sets a good base before we add the red tints for the organs. Next, we're using Sunburst Ochre. I might be butchering that, not sure, but we are going to be using that for the handle of his Executioner sword. First time using this paint, and I feel like it did a pretty good job at encapsulating essentially just a leathery look for his sword. It was one of the paints from the John Blanche set also that I had never used, but I feel like it turned out pretty good. But now that we are done basing, we get to move on to my favorite part, and that is weathering. And what better to do that than with Villainy ink? These are enamel paints, and I love them. They are fantastic. I believe they come in a set of, I think it's like 5 washes and like 2 effect paints. And the way that you use these is I use them solely for weathering. They are all about the Grimdark style. It's the Grimdark Compendium is who makes them. And I was a little bit skeptical about using them at first, but they turned out to be one of my favorite paints to use. We're just going to apply this to pretty much every white area of his armor. And then after that, there is a removal process that I'll go into detail a deeper detail into afterwards. But these are what's going to really bring out the whole weathered and grimy and just overall battle worn, dirty look that you're looking for in these minis. So, like I said, just kind of applying that to every space I see on his armor that is white. And this is the effect that you're going to get out of it before we start the removal process. And that was Goons Grime by Villainy Inc. It's a funny name, but it does a really good job. For the removal process here, you're going to want to have, whether it be a Q-tip or like in the video here, I'm using a makeup sponge, and you're going to want to very lightly dip that into some AK Interactive white spirits or whatever white spirits you have. And essentially, you're just going to want to lightly dab on the areas that you had applied the enamel paint, and the white spirits will reactivate the enamel paint, allowing you to move it around and overall just clean up the raised areas so that way the Goons Grime can sit in the recessed areas, keeping it dirty, but also bringing out a highlight to the raised areas. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how I hate edge highlighting. This essentially just does it for you. So you can kind of notice there, like on his leg, he's got the dirt and all of the cracked, creviced areas, but you can still tell that it is actually like a white armor underneath that has just been battle worn for a millennia. After that, I had also decided to apply the Goons Grime to the sack of disease, the bag of holding of disgust. And after you're done applying it to that, this is kind of what it looks like. Just overall, just shaded and gross, and that's the look we're going for here. So, like I said, works out great. After we're done with the Goons Grime, we're going to be shading the rest of the mini with Grimdark Shadow. This is also from the John Blanche Warpaint set, and we're going to be applying this to the cape and all of the metallic parts on the top of him. Now, the Grimdark Shadow, it's like I don't want to say it's like Nuln Oil, because it's more like a blackish green color. And at the end of the day, I feel like that just kind of gives you a better look than regular Nuln Oil with because over time, if you're getting dirty, it's not just black. It's going to be, black, brown, and or just some sort of stained look, and that's kind of what we're getting out of this wash here. Putting it on his little kangaroo pouch here now. And then after that, we're going to be moving on to the metallics. And right here, we're just going to make sure that we're getting the wash into all the cracks and crevices just to bring out the depth of the machinery. And the brace on his sack of disgust. And then after that, we will move on to the back. Now, unlike Villainy Inks, this is just a regular wash. You don't have to remove this. There's no removal process needed. All we're doing is we're just going over pretty much all of the, I guess you'd call it muted areas. It just kind of brings out the shadows. We're going to be applying this to the sword as well on both sides and the gun. And then after we're done with that, we are going to move on to adding some rust. So this rust is Grim Rust from the Warpaints John Blanche set, of course. And I'm not gonna lie to you. So this is the first time I have used this. Normally, what I do is I just use Ryza Rust by Citadel, and I will dry brush it on. But I decided to give this a go, and honestly, I was very impressed. I had no idea that this rust effect would come with little granular effects, and you'll see a better shot of it later, but it's got these little itty bitty, just like, it's just coarse. It's very coarse, and really has a great overall finish for rust. I'm trying to zoom in here now. It's kind of hard for you to see on camera, but if you look towards the tip of the blade, you can see it a little bit. It's just real grainy. It just looks very worn down. I mean, like I said, overall very impressed. Trying to get it into the recesses of the vent here, you got to remember that naturally, whenever where rust builds up is where moisture has been sitting. And so that's kind of just the mindset going behind this, getting it into the cracks. Water's probably just been sitting there, hasn't gotten out, so therefore rust builds up. And it's not something that you want to apply just, like regular paint. This is more of something that you want to apply with a little bit of precision. So I'm using a bit of a smaller brush right now, just trying to get in the vents here, trying to stay on the lower ends of these vent blades all the way around, as you can see. Like I said earlier, I know the didn't really get the best focus in here, but you get the point, and you'll see the end result regardless. There you go. Right now, applying it to the weapon, and you'll notice that what I'm doing is I'm not essentially lathering it on there. I'm trying to basically tap it all over the place. That way, it's more of a realistic uh, application. Moving on to applying it to his face mask as well. And then after we were done applying it to the blade, I took one last look at it and I decided I probably could use a little bit more. Really glad that I did. So just kind of applied a second thicker coat to the end of the blade, or the side of the blade, I should say. And this will probably give you a better idea of what I mean by granular once I turn it around here in just a moment. So that is the end result of the rust effect. Moving on now to another Villainy ink. This is Carrion Crimson. This is an enamel effect paint, and you're mainly going to want to use this on like Gore. As you can see here, I'm using it on his organ hoses. I'm not really sure what the technical name for it is called, but it's it essentially it still acts as a wash, but it has these little granular bits in it. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but you can notice a little bit here. There's these little specks all over it, and that just gives a better realistic approach of actual like gore and grime. And what you're about to see is my favorite part of this. This is my favorite Villainy ink paint that I'm going to be applying to the vent. This is the Decay of Death paint by them. This is an enamel. They say it's a wash. I feel like it's more of an effect. But what it is it's a green chalky enamel paint. And the way that I apply it is I try to get little blobs of it on the end of my brush and apply it to just all over. It kind of gives off the look of like that is the disease, that is the decay part of the mini. And I'm going to apply that to all of the metallics and to the black parts of his armor, but we're not going to apply it to either of his weapons. The way that Villainy Inks works, this is why I love them so much, is because depending on how you apply them, gives off a slightly different effect. For example, you'll see here in a minute that this Decay of Death, depending on how it dries, it gives off a different effect. So we are actually going to be drying this off once we're done applying it with a hairbrush, or not a hairbrush, a hair dryer. And when you do that, it is going to dry and it's going to, first of all, turn a lighter color green, and then it is going to dry chalky. So it really looks like an actual buildup of decay. Um, it's actually very impressive. It leaves great finishes on my minis, and the reason why I went in and painted all of his cloaks and stuff black is because I noticed that on darker colors it tends to show up a whole lot better. So we're just going to be putting this all over the black parts, like I said, on the kangaroo pouch, on the back of his cape. And I do end up having to put a second coat on the back part that you can see here. It didn't give me the best result through the first coat. And I don't have it on video of me hair drying it the second coat at least, but you'll get to see pretty much what it looks like once we're done. We're going to be putting it in his breathing apparatus as well, just to give off the effect that he's just constantly breathing it in. And right here, this is me using the hair dryer. You can probably see it. You can definitely see it on his right shoulder or, to the video, his left. But as it dries, you can see it turning a lighter or a brighter green. And that is that chalky effect that I was talking about. It actually looks like a real buildup of just decay. You can also see it pretty good on that vent too. I kind of tried to slow the video down just a little bit here just to give you a good look of what it looks like once it's dried. You can really see it in his pauldron there where it is just kind of just pulling out, especially right there in the crack of his cloak. And right now we're just going to be using a matte white. All we're going to be doing with this is applying it to his eye, because whenever you apply a brighter paint, for instance, I'm about to be using a fluorescent red. Whenever you apply that to a piece of your Mini, it pops way better when it's on a brighter white base. So this is the fluorescent red I'm using. It's Pro Acryl. And I'm going to be using this on his eyes and on his gun. So as you can see here, just using the absolute smallest brush I have, trying to be careful to not get it anywhere, because that paint pops if you are to apply it where you don't want it. So as you can see here, it's a pretty good eye effect. So right here, what I'm doing, it's not the best angle, but I am airbrushing the white onto the gun. That is to give an OSL, that is an object light source effect. And then after I apply the white, I am spraying the same Pro Acryl red onto it. That is going to give it that glowy effect. After that, we're going to take the white and we're going to put it into the recesses of the gun. That is to give off essentially a heat source. Not the best at this. I don't usually ever do light effects, but after we apply that white, we're going to want to dry brush a darker red onto it just to kind of take away from the the white, and it'll still have the white undertones but give it a darker effect as if it's hot. And while we're doing that, we're trying to get the red a little bit onto the actual gun itself. That way it appears as if the light is glowing. For the base, I'm just using Stirland mud. That's what it looks like after it is applied onto the Mini. And then the last villainy ink I'm using is Dystopian Brown. It's essentially a darker Goons Grime, and I'm kind of just taking that and putting it all over the little rock formation that he's standing on. And then after that, we're going to take the same Grim Dark Shadow wash paint that we used earlier for the metallics and put that over it. I felt like using the Dystopian Brown, it kind of meshed too much with like his actual armor, so this kind of gave it a little bit of a deeper color so it doesn't stand out as much. After that, the only thing we have left to do is apply some Abaddon Black to the outside edge of his base, and then that Mini will be finished. And that is my tutorial on my Lord of Poxes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down there, or any future video suggestions. I am more than open to it. And other than that, like I said, my name is Nate. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a good day. Peace.